From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know.
And we have returned with a piece of correspondence from a good friend of the show named They Still Call Me Mailman. They Still Call Me Mailman says, "Hey, Stuff They Don't Want You to Know crew, I recently re-listened to your September 14th, 2020 Strange News segment, including the mysterious mail dumps. It got me wanting an update on the Postal Service in general. The Postal Service Reform Act, H.R. 3076, recently passed the House and its counterpart in the Senate, awaiting President Biden's signature. It ends the pre-funding requirement you referred to and adds some other positive changes that will ensure viability for USPS for many years to come. I'd also like to hear about some of the issues Postmaster General Louis DeJoy is involved in and your take on his future in the U.S. Postal Service. Maybe talk about the Board of Governors and how that works. And include the fact that the USPS is controlled by Congress but receives zero tax dollars to fund the operations. Just a few other notes. When you were talking about how mail goes to all areas and other delivery companies do not, you guys remember that? We're talking about like FedEx and Amazon and, what's the other one? UPS. All those, they still call me mailman confirms this is true. And They Still Call Me Mailman says it's called, quote, last mile, and those other companies actually drop loads at the station for the U.S. Postal Service. Also, this is a fun fact. That little saying about neither wind nor rain nor dead of night, blah, 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 is not a postal policy thing or even an ad. It is a made-up thing some guy came up with a long time ago, and people latched onto it. I personally hate it and want people to stop trying to recite it to me. Thanks for the gratitude you expressed for USPS and all those that had to continue working throughout COVID. It was not easy and, in fact, was at times stressful, frustrating, and exhausting. But I also felt blessed that I still had a job and could continue to provide for my family." This is the kind of letter that we love because we're hearing from someone who is an expert, who is on the ground, who is confirming some things and raising some really important points here about conflicts of interest. So we can do this a couple of ways. We can start with the fun stuff and end on this villainous postmaster. And I'm not being rude here. This is an observation. It's villainous. Or we can start with the bad news and then end on something a little wholesome. Do you all have a preference?
Let's go bad news first. I want to know. I don't know anything about this, so I want to learn.
I'm with you.
All right. Okay. So this guy, DeJoy, is the current Postmaster General of the United States. The Postmaster General is it's a role like the Surgeon General, the guy who warns you about cigarettes. They're like the king of the post office. DeJoy is the 75th Postmaster General of the U.S., and that makes him also the Chief Executive Officer or CEO of the world's largest postal organization. Period. Full stop, not hyperbole. He started at this job in June of 2020, so he's almost 2 years in, but he has a lot of conflicts of interest. And I'd like to draw everybody's attention to some excellent reporting out of NBC Boston. this article in specific reveals some documents that detail the conflicts of interest that this guy is embroiled within as we record today. It comes to us courtesy of a watchdog group known as Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. Acronym fans, you'll note that sums up to CREW. So an outfit named CREW did a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request, that ultimately came through. And a lot of, as Matt, Noel, and I can assure you, a lot of FOIA requests get rejected. It depends on what you're asking about. But these documents detail how DeJoy started. Oh, actually, let me amend this. He started in 2020, but I believe it was in May, and he had to recuse himself from 12 different companies because he's a big time guy in private shipping, like the folks who want to replace your local post office, specifically an outfit called XPO Logistics. XPO Logistics is a freight transit company that moves through 18 countries. So they're international. They're not friends of your local mail carrier. He also gets a lot of heat politically because before he got this position, and we'll say it, we might ruffle some feathers, but the truth is the truth. He was a pretty big donor to the Donald Trump presidential campaign. And then he got this job as like the big guy in the post office. What do you think? I want to stop there, guys. Do you think that's pay for play? Does that sound sus to anyone?
Yeah, possibly a little sus.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the official statement, I guess, that was put out by the Office of the Inspector General of the United States Postal Service, and even what they're just putting out there officially about the investigation into DeJoy and his spouse, there's a lot of money, first of all, that they had in assets, specifically in those competitors you were talking about, Ben. And they even mentioned UPS and JB Hunt, a major trucking company. Their of course conclusion into an investigation for 2020, I guess, said like, he's all good. We're good here. Don't worry. Everything's fine.
Yes. The official finding was that meme of the dog in a house on fire. Everything's fine. Yeah, it's fascinating because in DeJoy's defense, he divested himself from many of these companies in August of 2020, so a few months after he took the job. But for people who are, citizen watchdogs, if you live in the US, these watchdogs are apolitical. They're supposed to make sure that we hold the leaders and public servants of the country accountable. And one guy, Noah Bookbinder, who is the president of CREW, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, says the following. Noah says, quote, "There was a period of time where the head of the Postal Service was making decisions where there could have been a conflict and he could have been thinking about his own financial interest rather than the interest of the Postal Service and the company." He's not saying that happened. That's an important distinction. He's saying that the opportunity was there. Call me cynical if we must, but I'm not persuaded without proof that this guy was on the up and up. There's a lot of scrutiny, and as a matter of fact, to what you were saying, they still call me mailman. There is growing pressure for DeJoy to leave office, and there are protesters because, the Postal Service does get a real rough time, especially in recent years or recent decades, you could say, and I'm starting to wonder if this is a full episode, like they still call me mailman, is asking us, because, the Postal Service we take it for granted, but it's a big deal. It's a really cool thing for a country to have, and it works for you.
I'm going to put a call out right now, guys, right now, to change politics in America. I'm trying to be silly on purpose. I think we need to find a way to get the ultra wealthy not so interested in politics and the political class. I don't know how you do that. I don't think it's possible, because I think power and money kind of go hand in hand up a ladder there. But if there was a way that we could mandate,
tall order, man.
we could mandate non-wealthy people to be in positions, like appointed positions like this, that don't have those connections, that are actually thinking about the betterment of people like them who don't have a lot of money, who need things like the Postal Service to function.
Can you kind of solve world hunger and create world peace while you're at it?
Yeah,
man?
let's do
That'd
that.
Be cool.
We need to have
Okay.
the not hungry people feed all of the hungry people. No, I'm just joking.
Oh, you
There are
figured
no
it. Okay,
simple-
nailed it. Now it's just details, right? Harumph,
That's
harumph,
just
harumph.
working it out.
Something must be done. No, you're making a good point too. There is a growing divide in the U.S. in particular, and it's honestly common in a lot of countries between the people making the decisions and the people who deal with the consequences of those decisions. Like the average, I talked about this in the past. The average age of a person in the U.S. is far lower than the average age of the high muckety mucks in politics. Also, the average income of a person in the U.S., I suspect, I'd have to verify this, is probably lower than the average income of the people who are making decisions that affect those folks. You were spot on. I will say it's a pickle because we have that question of, I used to think years ago, many years ago, decades, centuries ago, I used to think it'd be awesome to have broke people in Congress. I was like, I need someone who's got some, they've got some debt. They get what the average person is going through. But the problem with that is it also opens them up to corruption. And that's something that the country will have to navigate inevitably in the future.